Alright, so we all agree that AI is here to stay and it is definitely going to disrupt business models. Now, in this entire transformation, we're going to see some companies that are going to do tremendously well, and some existing companies, even though they might be very large, profitable, and reputed today, might actually decline if they are not able to integrate AI well into their business model. So, from an investor's point of view, it's very, very important to try to understand what are these companies that are going to survive, what qualities and signs do they need to depict, and then what are some KPIs that you can track yourself to try to see that in the real world. So that's why in today's video, we're exactly going to look at how AI is disrupting business models, what kind of companies are most likely to survive, and then we'll talk about the scale framework that you can use to actually judge whether a company is likely to survive or thrive in the future. So do watch the video till the end. So this disruption of business model due to a new technology is not a new affair. We have seen this throughout history. For example, we saw in the 80s, standardized PC software destroyed proprietary computing systems such as Wang Laboratories, which dominated the office word processing and mini computers market. But cheaper, general purpose personal computers running standard software reduced the value of its specialized system, and Wang filed for bankruptcy protection in 1992 after reacting too slowly to the shift. Similarly, we saw in the 90s, internet destroyed physical distribution modes. For example, companies like Blockbuster, which had expanded to more than 9,000 stores, but its expensive retail network eventually became a liability when companies like Netflix delivered entertainment without stores, inventory shortages, or late fees. And like we saw in Wang, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Again, in the early 2000s, we saw another example where software destroyed hardware-led dominance. Our beloved Nokia, which once controlled more than 47% of the global mobile phone market, got replaced by Apple and Android because competition shifted from handset manufacturing to operating systems, applications, and developer ecosystem. And this is not true just for the last 50 or 60 years. This is true throughout the span of industrial revolution, where we have seen new technologies disrupting business models. For example, in the early 1900s, steam used to supply around 80% of manufacturing's mechanical drive capacity, and by just 1929-30, we saw electricity completely replace steam. And this disruption is now definitely happening with AI. We are already seeing AI disrupt strong working business models. For example, let's take the case of check, where students who previously paid for stored homework solutions can now simply ask an AI system for personalized explanation almost instantly. And by mid of last year, we saw that Check report a dramatic drop in its revenue and subscriber base. And we're already seeing AI disrupt the market cap of some of the most profitable and reputed enterprise software and services company across the world. For example, in the US, Microsoft has seen a dip of about 9% since 2024. Some very popular companies like Adobe and Salesforce have seen their market caps drop by 40 to 60%. Intuit, ServiceNow, and Workday, which are also very popular software companies, have seen a dramatic drop in their market cap too. Now, this story is not just limited to the US. We are seeing a similar trend in India, where we are seeing large companies like TCS, Infosys, HCL, Wipro all report dramatic drop in their market caps in the last couple of years. And see, that's one thing that I like about capitalism, where it will continue to reallocate customers and profit to businesses that are able to deliver value more efficiently to its customers. And AI is doing exactly that in 6 different ways. It may begin by drafting an email, writing code, or answering a support question. But once these tasks are connected, an AI agent can perform that entire workflow, and the company charging separately for each employee, application, or step will start to lose economic value. Similarly, AI is attacking the labor skill mode. Previously, employing 100,000 trained people once allowed some of the large companies to execute projects that smaller competitors could not. But when AI enables a smaller team to produce similar output, workforce scale can turn from a competitive advantage into fixed cost baggage. And it's also attacking the knowledge mode. General research, standard advice, templates, basic analysis, and routine explanations are becoming abundant, and companies that charge premium prices mainly for organizing widely available knowledge face declining differentiation. Further, AI is attacking the interface mode, where customers may no longer need to learn and open multiple software applications. A one single AI agent may understand the desired outcome and operate several underlying systems invisibly. See, the other mode that AI is attacking is switching cost modes, because there are a lot of these companies where they survive today not because they have a better system, but just because they have a higher switching cost for a company to move to another new system. But with AI, customers can migrate databases, translate old code, rebuild integrations, and train employees on new systems very easily. Now, switching will not become effortless, but the friction protecting many legacy vendors may fall materially. On the other hand, companies with scarce modes, such as proprietary real time data, regulatory licenses, trusted brands, physical infrastructure, distribution networks, and mission critical customer relationships, if they can pair AI and integrate AI in their business models, they can actually become better companies. And I think AI is going to be even more transformational from the previous technologies that we've seen, is because most previous technologies used to primarily try to optimize the cost of physical space or storage or distribution. Your cars replaced horses. Your mobile phone replaced your calculators, your alarms, your radios, your telephones all at once. Similarly, cloud computing replaced the need for having physical servers at your premises. Now, what AI is doing is going one step above. It's taking out the need for cognition itself, including writing, coding, searching, comparing, summarizing, analyzing documents, analyzing sales, answering customers, creating advertisements, detecting patterns, and even coordinating workflows. And the cost curve is moving extremely quickly. We are seeing that AI compute cost and deployment cost come down exponentially in just the last few years, and this is expected to go down exponentially further in the next few years from here. In Stanford's AI index, which reported that the cost of querying a model performing around GPT 3.5 level fell from approximately $20 per million tokens in November 2022 to about 7 cents by October 2024. We don't have data for 2025, but this is phenomenal. This is like 286 times reduction. This is crazy. And at the same time, we are also seeing that a lot of companies and organizations are now reporting a lot more usage of generative AI, where it has grown from just 33% in 2023 to now 80%. And I'm sure this number is only going to go up, where most companies are going to start using AI agents. So with AI, the threat is not only automation. The deepest AI disruption will not be that machines replace every human. What it will be is that customers will stop paying the old price for work that now requires much fewer hours and much fewer people and does not depend on specialized knowledge limited to just a handful of people. So that is why the bigger risk is not that everything gets automated. The bigger risk is that companies are forced to reprice their services, and that puts a tremendous strain on their existing margins. And when companies' margins get challenged, they eventually stop deserving the value that they were getting. And because of this is why I feel like blue chip companies at the highest risk of disruption from AI. Now, why? Because for decades, scale was one of the strongest corporate advantages. Well, yes, those companies can still use AI to strengthen them. But in many cases, AI can actually reverse these advantages that blue chip companies have. For example, more employees typically used to mean more delivery capacity. Now, that same workforce that once created operating leverage can become a cost structure that competitors do not need. More branches meant better distribution. The same branches today that created distribution can become expensive physical overhead. More data meant better decisions. But now the same customized technology systems can become difficult to integrate with modern AI tools. Previously, more management layers meant greater control. Now the same management layers that created control can slow down decisions. It used to mean that more technology systems would lead to higher switching cost, but we're already seeing AI lower that migration friction. And previously, definitely larger advertising budgets meant you had a stronger brand. But now, if you're a famous brand and you're not able to create confidence with your customers, then you might actually see a sharper decline because you cannot hide. So, in that way, yesterday's scale advantage may actually become tomorrow's AI drag. And your dominance in the previous era does not guarantee your success in the next one. So this leads to the question on which companies will eventually survive. Now, we all know companies that are adaptive will survive, and the companies which are defensive on AI will actually decline. And the funniest thing is that defensive companies will not stop using AI language. They will keep announcing co-pilots, partnerships, and programs, but they will continue to preserve their existing business model. And their typical response to the entire AI story is going to be layoffs. rather than trying to change the value proposition for their customers. So that's why we're going to talk about the scale framework. So that's a very objective way for you to measure whether a company is likely to survive or are they going to decline. So the scale framework has 5 levels to it. So the first one is seats, staff, and steps. So ask yourself whether this company's revenue is increasing because their customers are just adding seats or outsourcing employees. So, for example, your BPOs that get paid by the agent, or a services company that gets paid for 100 additional IT engineers are definitely at a greater exposure when companies who are measured in their outcomes, such as number of frauds prevented or number of claims processed or revenue generated. And a very easy way to do that is to track revenue per employee or employee growth versus revenue growth. If they are hinting towards the same direction, then you know that it's probably dependent heavily on number of employees rather than the outcome. The second is cannibalization. Ask whether the company is willing to launch AI products that might eat into their existing product. See, companies need to start thinking about future pricing models instead of trying to protect its existing pricing models. And you can do that by simply tracking how much of their revenue is now coming from new native AI products. The third is architectural debt, and this is closest to my heart because from my years of IT experience, I can tell you this is going to be the biggest nail in the coffin for large companies because you might have tremendous amount of data with you, but if they all sit in fragmented databases on customized softwares and incompatible processes, then you will not be able to build one integrated unified way of accessing that data that then AI can use and then generate the value that you're looking for. On paper, yes, you will have a lot of information with you, a lot of knowledge capital sitting with you, but you will not be able to put that to use using AI. And just attaching a chatbot to an existing process is not sign that you have deployed AI. What is really required is that you give AI access to all the knowledge capital that you possess and then leverage that to build your future business models. Now, this is a little difficult to track because no company really publishes this publicly. But what if you want to track it? Some of the ways that you can do it is to try to understand how much of the workload is cloud native. Is the company still using legacy platforms, or are they transitioning to a new platform? How many data governance incidents do they have? What is the integration time do they have to deploy? And the cost of maintaining old system. If that's too high, that's already telling you that they're still stuck in legacy systems. The fourth is layers and latency. And this is very, very important for large companies to try to understand. See, in the future, what you want to see is that your improvements from your customer feedback or whatever issues that you're having on the ground will be solved much, much faster by AI. So what you need is much faster decision making and you need much faster deployments. But that cannot happen because we know that in large companies, the levels of bureaucracy is so much. If you have to run every idea and every deployment through technology, legal compliance, finance, regional business, and God knows what else, then definitely you're going to lose out on competitors who are able to move much faster. And the way to measure that would be to see how much time are companies taking to move from pilot to production. What is the overall life cycle of a product release? And how much time does the company take to onboard a new customer or vendor? And really the number of management layers the company has for making decisions. The last expectation, and this is very interesting because a company might be doing everything right with AI, and that might also become a challenge for them because what could happen is investors then might start to have very high expectations from these companies, and they might expect exceptional execution, perfect execution, which we all know is not possible. And that could lead to a dramatic drop in their valuations too. And we're seeing that. We saw that even though Broadcom had a great earnings report, but because it was just slightly below what the investors were expecting, the company saw a market price decline of double digits in just a matter of days. So that's very, very interesting. And we are also seeing that with a lot of semiconductor companies today, where the expectations and earnings are still great, but they're seeing that capital is leaving them because they're not able to deliver on the high expectations that investors have now put them to. If you go to the part 2 of this video, I've actually used this framework on some of the largest US and Indian software and services company and where do they stand basis this framework. You can go and check it out in the part 2. So if you enjoyed this video, please do like this and subscribe to my channel for more such informative videos. Thanks for watching.